So there I was, standing at the head of a 20-foot-long mahogany dining table in my own home, holding a ridiculously expensive glass of champagne. The room was silent, all eyes on me. We were hosting a dinner party, the kind my wife, Sarah, loved to throw. All our friends were there, the ones who had seen us grow from broke college kids into, well, this. Successful. Polished. The perfect couple. My business partner and best friend, Mark, was sitting right next to her, giving me a supportive grin. I cleared my throat. I'd like to propose a toast. I began, my voice steady, betraying none of the Arctic rage that had been solidifying in my gut for the past 72 hours. To my beautiful wife, Sarah. She beamed, lifting her glass. Everyone murmured in agreement. And to my best friend and business partner, Mark, a man who is closer to me than a brother. Mark raised his glass higher, looking pleased. To Alex, he boomed. I held up a hand, silencing the room again. I've learned a lot from these two. Sarah taught me that forgiveness is a beautiful thing. And Mark taught me that some partnerships are so deep, so intimate, that they transcend mere friendship or business. I let that hang in the air for a second, watching the smiles on their faces start to flicker. In fact, I continued, my voice dropping just a little. They've gotten so good at sharing, they decided to share everything. My money, my home, and even my wife. So my toast is actually a thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for showing me that a person's character, once revealed, never really changes. And thank you, Mark, for taking care of my wife's needs while I was busy building the company that paid for your car, your watch, and the very suit you're wearing. The silence in that room was something physical. You could have heard a pin drop on the Persian rug. Sarah's face went from a perfect, photogenic smile to the color of chalk. Mark looked like he'd been tasered. Oh, and one last thing, I said, setting my glass down with a soft click. As a parting gift for the happy new couple, the locks will be changed by morning. The house was sold yesterday. The company has been dissolved, and all assets have been moved to an account you can't touch. Your termination letter, Mark, is already in your inbox. My lawyer's name is Ben. You'll be hearing from him. Enjoy your dinner. And with that, I turned and walked out of the dining room, leaving a crater in the middle of our perfect life. But to understand how a man could do that, you have to understand how he got there. And it all started, as these things so often do, with a mistake I made 15 years ago. The mistake of forgiveness. We met in college. It was the classic story. I was a nerdy engineering student. She was the vibrant, life-of-the-party art major. I couldn't believe she even looked at me. Sarah had this energy, you know? She made you feel like you were the only person in the world. We fell in love, hard and fast. I was all in. I thought she was my forever. Then, senior year, it happened. We had a stupid fight about something. I don't even remember what. I went to the library to cool off, and she went to a frat party. The next morning, she came to my dorm, her eyes red and puffy, and confessed. She'd gotten drunk and slept with some guy from the lacrosse team. My world just shattered. I felt hollowed out. I was 19, and the first woman I had ever truly loved had just ripped my heart out. I broke up with her on the spot. The next few weeks were hell. She cried. She begged. She sent me long, handwritten letters. She swore it was the biggest mistake of her life, a stupid, drunken accident that meant nothing. My friends told me to run for the hills. Once a cheater, always a cheater, they said. But I was young, and I was in love. I saw her pain, and I believed it. I believed she was genuinely remorseful. So, against everyone's advice, I took her back. I made her promise me two things: absolute honesty, always, and that it would never, ever happen again. She swore on her life. And for a long time, it seemed like I had made the right choice. We graduated, and I got a decent job at a tech firm. Sarah struggled to find work as an artist, so I told her not to worry. Focus on your passion, I said. I'll handle the bills. And I did. I worked my ass off, pulling 60, 70-hour weeks. I was driven by this need to build a perfect, stable life for us. A life so good that the memory of that frat house betrayal would be nothing but a tiny, faded scar. A few years in, I decided to start my own software company with my best friend from work, Mark. Mark was great. He was the charismatic salesman. I was the tech guy behind the scenes. We were a perfect team. Sarah was our biggest cheerleader. She designed our logo, helped furnish our first tiny office. It felt like we were all in it together. The company took off. I mean, it really took off. Within 5 years, We went from two guys in a garage to a 50-person operation with a corner office downtown. The money started pouring in, and I gave Sarah everything. I mean, everything she ever wanted. A $3 million house in the suburbs. A brand new Range Rover every 2 years. A credit card with no limit, which she used for shopping trips to New York, spa days, and lavish lunches with her friends. She quit even trying to sell her art and became a full-time rich wife. And I was happy to give it to her. Seriously, I felt like I was making up for her one big mistake. I was proving that my forgiveness was worth it, that we had built this incredible life on the foundation of that second chance I gave her. Our friends saw us as the ultimate power couple. "You guys are so lucky," they'd say. "You can just see how much he adores you, Sarah." And I did. I really did. Which is why I didn't see the signs at first. Or maybe I just didn't want to. It started subtly. A couple of years ago, the dynamic started to shift. Sarah started complaining that I was always working. "You're never here, Alex," she'd say, even as she was unpacking bags from another shopping spree funded by that same work. I suggested she could come on business trips with me, but she always had an excuse. A friends thing, a yoga retreat, a charity luncheon. Then Mark became a more frequent topic of conversation. He and I were always close, but suddenly he and Sarah were, too. "Mark helped me pick out your birthday present," she'd say. Or, "I was having car trouble and Mark was nearby, so he gave me a ride." It was all perfectly innocent on the surface. He was my best friend. Of course, he'd help my wife. Why would I think anything of it? The first real gut punch came about a year ago. I was looking at our credit card statement, something I rarely did. I just paid it. And I saw a charge for a 2-night stay at a boutique hotel downtown. The kind of place you go for a romantic weekend. I knew for a fact I wasn't there. I was in Singapore for a conference that week. When I asked her about it, she didn't even flinch. "Oh my God, that's so weird," she said, pulling out her phone. "That was for the creative team's offsite meeting. Mark must have used my card by mistake instead of the company card. I'll get him to reimburse it. Don't worry about it." It sounded plausible. A little too plausible, maybe. But what was I going to do? Accuse my wife and my best friend of conspiring against me based on a credit card charge? I'd sound insane. I let it go. But a seed of doubt, a cold, familiar seed from my college dorm room, had been planted. The next incident was a few months later. It was our anniversary. I had worked like a dog to clear my schedule, booked a table at her favorite Michelin star restaurant, and bought her a diamond necklace I knew she'd been eyeing. I came home early, excited to surprise her. But the house was empty. I called her. No answer. I texted her. Nothing. 6 o'clock came and went. 7 o'clock, the time of our reservation, passed. I sat there in our cavernous living room, the little velvet box with the necklace in my hand, feeling like a complete fool. She finally waltzed in around 9:30, looking flushed and flustered. "Oh my God, honey, I am so sorry," she gushed. "My friend Jenny had a total meltdown. Her husband is leaving her." I had to rush over. My phone died. It was a whole drama. I completely forgot about dinner. "Jenny," I asked, my voice flat. "I just saw her husband post a picture of them on a boat on Instagram an hour ago. They're on vacation." The color drained from her face for a split second before she recovered. No, not that Jenny. My other friend, Jenny. From yoga. You don't know her." I knew she was lying. I could feel it in my bones. It was the same vague, frantic energy she had the morning after that frat party. But again, I had no proof. Just a gut feeling. And I started to wonder if I was the problem. Was I so paranoid from what happened in college that I was seeing ghosts everywhere? I was gaslighting myself on her behalf. The escalation peaked when my own sister pulled me aside at a family barbecue. She looked uncomfortable. "Alex," she started, twisting a napkin in her hands. "I don't want to be that person, but I saw Sarah and Mark at a cafe last week. You were in Seattle, I think. And they weren't sitting like friends." "What does that mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "He was holding her hand across the table," she said quietly. "And when they left, he had his hand on the small of her back. It was just intimate. I'm sorry, I just thought you should know." That was it. That was the validation I needed. It wasn't in my head. My sister wouldn't lie to me about something like that. The cold seed of doubt bloomed into a full-blown, thorny bush of dread in my stomach. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Sarah, watching her breathe peacefully, this stranger in my bed, and I felt a cold fury I hadn't felt in 15 years. I needed proof. Real, undeniable, soul-crushing proof. And in the modern age, That's not too hard to find if you know where to look. We had a shared family cloud account for photos. I rarely used it, but I knew it automatically backed up photos from both our phones. My heart was pounding in my chest as I opened my laptop at 3 a.m. and logged in. I navigated to her phone's backup folder, my hands shaking. And there it was. It wasn't just one photo. It was a hidden folder. A folder titled Summer Project. My blood ran cold. I clicked on it. Inside were dozens of pictures. Pictures of Sarah and Mark. On a beach I didn't recognize. In a hotel room that definitely wasn't from a creative offsite. They were kissing. They were in bed together. Laughing. Holding each other. There were pictures of them on a business trip to Napa Valley that I had funded. A trip where Mark was supposed to be closing a deal, and Sarah had gone along to visit an art gallery. They weren't closing deals. They were living a second life. My life. On my dime. The worst part? The dates on the photos. They went back over 2 years. 2 years of lies. 2 years of me working myself to the bone to give her a perfect life, while she was sharing it with my best friend. At that moment, it wasn't even white-hot anger I felt. It was a terrifying, absolute calm. The kind of calm you feel in the eye of a hurricane. The kid who forgave his college girlfriend was gone. He died right there, in my home office at 3 in the morning. In his place was a man who saw everything with perfect, brutal clarity. She hadn't made a mistake. She had made a choice. And she kept making it, over and over again, every single day for 2 years. My forgiveness hadn't been a gift. It had been an opportunity. She didn't see it as a second chance to build a life with me. She saw it as a license to do whatever she wanted, because she knew I was the kind of fool who would forgive her. She had mistaken my kindness for weakness. And now, I was going to show her, and Mark, just how wrong they were. For the next 3 days, I was the perfect husband. I brought her coffee in bed. I asked about her day. I listened to her complain about the caterer for the dinner party we were planning for that weekend. All the while, I was moving pieces around a chessboard only I could see. The first call was to my lawyer, Ben. He was a shark, the best divorce attorney in the state. I want to hit her with a nuke, I told him. We checked the prenup I had insisted on after we got engaged. She had laughed at it at the time. Don't you trust me? She'd asked, pouting. I trust the person you are today, I had said. This is in case you ever become someone else. The prenup was ironclad. In the event of infidelity, she got nothing. Absolutely nothing. The second call was to a real estate agent. I want to sell my house. Off-market, quiet, and fast. And I needed to close by Friday. The market was hot, and my house was a showpiece. He had a cash buyer lined up in 5 hours. I signed the papers electronically that night while Sarah was watching reality TV in the next room. The third step was the company. I called an emergency board meeting without Mark. I owned 60% of the company. He owned 40%. I laid out the situation. Betrayal, fraud. He'd been expensing his little getaways on the company card, just like Sarah said, and a complete breach of fiduciary duty. I had the proof. They voted unanimously to terminate his position and buy out his shares at a fraction of their value, as stipulated in our partnership agreement under the gross misconduct clause. I spent the next 72 hours methodically and silently dismantling the life I had built. I moved all our joint funds into a new personal account. I canceled her credit cards. I packed a single go bag and left it in my car. I was a ghost, erasing myself from the picture. Which brings us back to the dinner party. Her dinner party. The one she had been planning for weeks. A showcase of our perfect life. It was the perfect stage. All our friends, our social circle, the people she cared so much about impressing. They were all there to witness the final act. When I walked out of that dining room, I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove to a hotel. I turned my phone off. The next morning, I turned it back on to an apocalyptic storm of missed calls and texts. Dozens from her, going from confusion, "Where are you?" to panic, "Alex, the cards aren't working," to pure, unadulterated rage. Texts from Mark, full of threats and disbelief. Texts from our friends, ranging from, "OMG, what happened?" to, "Dude, are you okay?" The aftermath was exactly as I had planned. It was brutal and swift. Sarah was left with nothing but the designer clothes on her back and the Range Rover, which was in her name, the one thing I let her have. She tried to fight the prenup, but it was useless. She was humiliated, a social pariah overnight. She ended up having to move back in with her parents. Mark was finished, fired, disgraced, and his reputation in our industry was shredded. I heard his wife left him too. Apparently, my little dinner party speech was the first she'd heard of any of it. Last I checked, he and Sarah were trying to make a go of it, living in a small apartment across town, but I can't imagine that lasting. Their entire relationship was built on the thrill of sneaking around and spending my money. Once you take those two things away, what's left? As for me, it was hard. It was like performing surgery on myself without anesthesia. But once the wound closed, I felt free. I realized I had spent 15 years trying to be good enough for the girl who cheated on me in college. I was still that insecure kid, trying to buy her loyalty and build walls of money so high that no lacrosse player could ever climb over them again. It took me a while, but I started over. I rebuilt my company, leaner and smarter this time. I traveled. I reconnected with friends and family. I learned to trust my own gut. And I learned the hardest lesson of all. You can forgive someone for hurting you, but you can't force them to be worthy of that forgiveness. Some people aren't looking for a second chance. They're just looking for a second